The air in Leonard Graves' three-story penthouse in Tribeca had a special, money-bought sterility. It was cleared of dust, smells, random sounds, and, most importantly, human uncertainty. Standing behind a glass console table that had been transformed into a giant touchscreen, Leonard completed the calibration. The Manhattan skyline behind the panoramic windows was not a view, but an interface, a shimmering map of its influence. In 120 minutes, the final negotiations with the Abu Dhabi investor syndicate were to begin at the Per Se restaurant. The Apex Dubai Mirage project is not just a new hotel. It was an architectural manifestation, a digital fetish, a man-made mirage in the desert, capable of generating $500 million in annual revenue. The 6-month work of 30 of the best lawyers, architects, and analysts was reduced to a 3-hour dinner. Success did not depend on the numbers in the tables. The numbers were perfect, but on the choreography. From the subtle dance of confidence, tradition and innovation, where each participant had his own role, verified to the micron. His right-hand man, Marcus Vail, was a critical part of this choreography. His calm, grounded confidence, his military service history, and his respectable family were all invisible assets that calmed nervous princes who preferred dealing with dynasties rather than self-made geniuses like Leonard. Leonard touched the hologram of the hotel's facade with his finger, and it crumbled into layers. Supporting structures, climate control systems, logistics for the supply of marble from Carrara. Every layer was under control. And yet, deep in his diaphragm, somewhere under his ribs, there was a cold, tiny knot of anxiety. It's not the fear of failure, it's the fear of a system error, an unpredictable variable. He hated unpredictability. In the living room next door, in a world parallel to his digital one, there was a different type of order. The only sound that broke the silence was the soft hiss of microfiber on the polished concrete floor. Annabelle moved through space not as a person, but as a phenomenon of physics. With minimal expenditure of energy, with maximum efficiency of the result. Her consciousness was divided. One part of it tracked microscopic streaks, invisible specks of dust in the setting sun, the perfect angle of cashmere sofa cushions worth her annual rent. The other part was back in Brooklyn, in a tiny dorm room at Columbia University, where her sister Chloe was rereading her organic chemistry notes for the 100th time. In her mind, Anna was already calculating what percentage of today's payment would go to new textbooks, what would be postponed for a sudden visit to the dentist. What would be for her own secret fund for escape. Escape to where, she didn't know. Her escape was already happening here and now, in her bag, in the form of a battered volume of Susan Sontag's On Photography. Between cleaning the surface of the onyx cube coffee table and wiping the giant Rothko watercolor on the wall, she would pick out a paragraph, a sentence, a thought. It was her oxygen. An hour and a half before dinner, the system crashed. The vibration of the iPhone on the glass surface was not a ringing sound, but a tactile impact. Marcus Vail. Leonard accepted the challenge, having already started mentally synchronizing the last theses. Leonard. Marcus's voice was a stranger's. Strangled, devoid of the usual baritone timbre. That was the first alarm signal. I'm listening. On the spot? No. And I won't. There was a pause, and on the other end there was a blurred hospital hum, someone crying. This is Sophie. The school. Fell on physical education. Suspected concussion, possible fracture of the collarbone. We're at Lenox Hill. She's panicking, Jessica can't handle it. The cold knot under Leonard's ribs opened into an icy void. He continued to stare at the hologram of Dubai. Marcus. Luke Al-Fad and his uncle are already in the limo from the plaza. They flew out of Abu Dhabi this morning for this meeting. You are stability. You are a trust factor. Without you, it's an algorithm without a key variable. She's 9 years old, Leo. Marcus's voice cracked, the fury of desperation in it. She's calling me. You still don't understand? I cannot. Sorry. A click. A dead silence, thicker than concrete and glass, filled the penthouse. 45 minutes. Leonard slowly lowered the phone. The numbers on the screen, the time, the exchange rates, the temperature in Dubai, kept running, meaningless and mocking. His entire flawless, well-thought-out world, his entire control architecture, cracked along an invisible line. He was the captain of a ship whose navigator disappeared before the decisive storm. He stood up. His legs didn't seem to obey him, carrying his body on autopilot from the study to the living room, the one where a few minutes ago there was only the sound of her rag. She was there, on my knees by a fireplace that has never been lit. A light ray of the setting sun, breaking through the smoky glass, gilded the edge of her cheek, neck, and a strand of dark hair that had escaped from a severe bun. She didn't fuss. Every movement, checking the surface, changing the water in the bucket, wringing out the rag, was part of an endless, perfect ritual. He looked at her, and his brain, shutting off emotions, went into cold, desperate analysis mode. He didn't see Anna from the clinic. He saw a variable. He saw the trick. He saw the absolute preoccupation with the task at the moment when his own world was falling apart into pixels. She was the antithesis of chaos. And in that moment of absolute collapse, her calm, unmarked humanity became the only fulcrum in a crumbling universe. A crazy algorithm was born in his head instantly, connecting the incongruous. Her appearance presentable, in a different context, her silence, can be interpreted as restraint, her non-belonging to his world, fresh look. The risk was prohibitive. The probability of success is negligible. But the probability of failure of inaction was 100%. Anna. His voice, low and harsh as the rasp of ice, cut through the silence of her ritual. Anna shuddered all over, impulsively clutching the cloth in her hand. My heart sank into the void for a second, a standard reaction of the body to the violation of the unspoken contract of invisibility. She slowly raised her head, turned on her knees. Her eyes, gray and too serious for her age, met his gaze. There was no fear of reprimand in them. She knew that she had done her job flawlessly. There was bewilderment in them. Deep, fundamental bewilderment at the fact of his own voicing in this universe. Mr. Graves, her voice was flat, professionally neutral. I'm finishing the fireplace area. Everything will be ready in 10 minutes. He did not respond to her remark. He looked at her as if he had never seen her before. Scanned it. He assessed the angle of the cheekbone, the line of the eyebrow, the fit of the head. Have you ever been to dinner at the Per Se? He asked. The question hung in the air, devoid of context, as absurd as a dream. Anna got up slowly, feeling her leg muscles go numb. The water from the cloth dripped onto the perfect floor, and she almost made a move to wipe it off, but stopped herself. No, she replied simply, without adding anything. Of course not. Get ready. You have 30 minutes. His tone left no room for questions. It wasn't an invitation. It was entering parameters into a new, crazy program. I don't understand. My colleague will not be able to attend. I need to be present at dinner. Neutral, stabilizing. Someone who will sit next to you and broadcast that everything is going strictly according to plan. He spoke abruptly, like he was giving orders on a construction site. You won't need to talk much. Just be there. The absurdity of the situation grew, pressing on the eardrums. Anna felt a surge of panic and bitter irony. Do you want me to represent you? At a business meeting? She almost laughed, but the laughter stuck somewhere in her throat. Mr. Graves, I'm cleaning your house. Not tonight. Tonight you are Anna Bell, cultural experience consultant for Apex Residences projects. Your specialization is the integration of the local artistic narrative into the global spaces of the suite. He blurted it out like a mantra, already constructing a legend. This is not a discussion. It's a necessity. She finally saw it in his eyes. Not arrogance. Not a whim. Not a calculation. She saw the emergency alarm. The same panic of a system failure, frozen and compressed into a steely determination. He was standing on the edge of a sinkhole, and he was clutching at straws. For her. And then he said a word that changed everything. Please. It sounded foreign, clumsy, almost hoarse. Leonard Graves didn't say please. He claimed, demanded, acquired. That please was the key that tore off the string of her inner resistance. Suddenly, he wasn't the unapproachable Mr. Graves, the god from the 50th floor. He became a man. Very powerful, very dangerous, but for a moment he was just a man cornered. And he asked her for help. There was a civil war going on inside Anna. The fear screamed of potential humiliation, of the impossibility of playing this role, of a collapse that would be 1,000 times more painful than her current invisibility. But something else, long asleep, stirred. Curiosity. Challenge. An acute, almost painful thirst to look at that world not through a window, not through the pages of a book, but from the inside. And the awkward, strange responsibility to this suddenly vulnerable titan. She was silent for so long that he started to turn away, mistaking her silence for rejection. Then she said, "What should I wear?" The next 30 minutes were a waking dream. He led her into a walk-in closet, a room the size of her Brooklyn apartment where clothes were arranged according to color, temperature and architectural styles rather than seasons. Without looking, he took a dress from a hanger, a simple case made of dark blue crepe, without a single seam, decoration, or a hint of design. The very high cost lay in his denial of decoration. 10 minutes, he said, and walked out, leaving her alone with this piece of cloth that weighed less than air. In the huge marble bathroom, Anna ran into a stranger. The dress clung to her as if her body was molded to it. She let her hair down. The reflection in the mirror was elegant, austere, alien. "Who are you?" she asked silently. The reflection did not respond. Her heart was still beating under the cloth, and there were old, barely noticeable calluses on her palms. She was a dummy, a perfect replica of someone she had never been. The elevator carried them down in deathly silence. He smelled of ozone and his cologne, which was as cold as the mountain air. His driver, impenetrable as a statue, was already waiting by the black Bentley Bentayga. The cabin smelled of leather and silence. He was looking at his tablet, but Anna could tell he wasn't reading. "Protocol," he finally said, without looking up. "Your legend. You work with independent curators and digital artists. Your task is to create for our guests not just an impression, but a narrative, a history of the place. If you are asked about the details, smile and say that the project is in the curated experiment phase, the details are under the NDA. Your main function is non-verbal. You are the stabilizer. You radiate calmness and competence. All you have to do is be yourself. Only. The filtered version. Be yourself? Her voice sounded hoarse. That's the problem. The I does not exist for them. He finally looked up from the tablet and looked at her. In the dark interior, his face looked like it was carved out of granite. That's why it will work. Because in a room full of people playing proven roles, the only thing that catches on is a hint of authenticity. You have it. Don't try to become one. Just don't hide it completely. The car turned onto Columbus Circle. The lights of the city floated outside the window, liquid and unreal. "Why me? What is it?" she asked again, more quietly. "You probably have dozens of suitable people." He thought about it. "Because they're playing. And right now I need someone who's just there." And because, he paused, choosing his words, because when the system fails, sometimes you need to enter a random variable to get a non-standard result. You are my random variable, Anna. They drove up to the front door. The doorman opened the door. Leonard got out first, then turned around and held out his hand to help her. It was a gesture from another scenario, from the life where they were a couple. She paused for a moment, then put her hand in his. His fingers were dry and warm. She went out. The cold March air hit my face. She took a step towards her most incredible evening. Perse greeted them with the soft humming light of crystal chandeliers reflected in the mirrored walls and smooth surfaces of black granite. The air was thick with the scents of expensive leather, vanilla orchids, and a subtle note of truffle. Leonard walked in with the casual confidence of a man who buys places like this rather than rents them for the evening. Anna followed him, feeling her every step on the soft carpet echo in her temples. She caught glances at herself, quick, professional, scanning. They assessed her dress, a nod of approval, her face, curiosity, and her posture, a slight tension that could be mistaken for restraint. Leonard casually put his hand on her back, between her shoulder blades. It wasn't a caress. It was a tactile beacon, an orientation point. I'm here, stay the course. 3 people were already sitting at a table in the corner by the window overlooking the darkened Central Park. Luck Al-Fad, a young man with the face of a courteous falcon and eyes that saw 3 moves ahead. His uncle, Sheikh Qasim, was massive and silent, whose presence was physical. And their translator advisor, a thin man with an iPad, who was the 4th player at the table. The presentations were brief. Gentlemen, my colleague, Annabelle. She oversees cultural immersion for Apex. He didn't say art. He said immersion. It was the correct, modern term. She shook the outstretched hands, feeling the dry, strong grip of the onion and the heavy, soft palm of the sheikh. For the first 40 minutes, Anna was the backdrop. The conversation was about ultra-high-strength concrete, energy-efficient facades, and logistics hubs. She nodded in the right places, took a small sip of water when everyone was drinking wine. Her brain, honed by years of observation, was working on analysis. Luck loved accurate data, the sheikh appreciated hints of heritage and tradition, the advisor caught every discrepancy. Leonard was brilliant. He parried technical issues, wove poetry into figures about recreating the coolness of an oasis in the heart of the desert, and deftly bridged the way to benefits for the local community. And then Luck Al-Fad turned to her. His gaze was politely interested. Miss Bell, cultural immersion is a fashionable term. In Dubai, every second project speaks of a local narrative. How do you measure the profitability of empathy? There was no challenge in his voice, but the intellectual curiosity of a predator testing a new toy. All eyes turned to her. My throat was dry. She met Leonard's gaze. He was impenetrable, but she caught a microscopic spark in the corner of his eye. Speak up, whatever it is. Anna put down her fork. Her hands were folded in her lap, hidden under the tablecloth. We don't measure the profitability of empathy, Mr. Al-Fad. We're measuring the cost of forgetting. Her voice was quieter than she'd intended, but clear, without a tremor. Luck raised an eyebrow. The sheikh stopped looking around the room. Explain it. The hotel is a temporary home. People come to Dubai for the future, for the fantasy. But a fantasy that has no roots is just a backdrop for selfies. It is erased from memory as soon as the lights turn on at the airport. Our task is not to give them an impression, but a feeling. A tangible memory. The smell of certain spices in the lobby is not from a diffuser, but from a nearby bakery that we sponsor. The sound is not generic air ambient music, but live guitar playing if the guest opens the window at a certain hour. The art on the walls is not by famous artists, but by local artists telling the stories of neighborhoods that no longer exist. It doesn't create an impression. This creates a connection. And a connection is what makes a person come back and tell a friend. The money spent on an impression is an expense. The money invested in creating a personal connection between the guest and the place is the only long-term investment that translates into loyalty. And loyalty, as you know, is the most scarce currency in the world. She paused, afraid that she had said too much too strangely. Leonard stared at her. His face was set in stone, but there was a storm in his eyes: shock, admiration, triumph. Luck Al-Fahd smiled slowly. It was not a secular smile, but a sincere, interested one. You talk about the hotel business as a machine learning for human emotions. The training sample is a local context, and the result is a personalized memory. Very elegant. Sheikh Qasim said something softly in Arabic to the advisor. He translated, addressing Leonard. His Excellency says that for too long Western companies have been bringing their art to us, as if to a museum. The idea of turning a hotel into a living, breathing organism that learns from the city around it is worthy of respect. The conversation came alive, shifted. They were no longer talking about concrete, but about meanings. Anna, accelerating, caught the rhythm. She talked about the Japanese philosophy of wabi-sabi, the beauty of imperfection, which can be woven into the sparkling aesthetics of Dubai. She mentioned the projects of contemporary artists working with the memory of the city. She wasn't spouting names, she was talking about concepts. And they listened. For real. When the dinner was over and the guests had left, Leonard took her aside to an alcove by the wardrobe. What was that? What is it? He asked softly. His voice was hoarse. I was just saying what I thought. Just like you said. I said, don't hide the authenticity. I didn't expect you to bring out a whole philosophical doctrine and sell it better than I sell square footage. He ran a hand over his face. You didn't just save dinner. You've changed the whole narrative of the project. They won't buy a hotel. They'll buy the story you wrote on the napkin. Do you understand the scale? In the limo back, there was a different kind of silence. Heavy, charged, like the air after a thunderstorm. I can't just take you home, he said, looking out the night window. Why? Because what happened is not an incident. This is a discovery. Them, and maybe yours. I'm offering you a job. The real one. Not a one-night stand role. He laid out the offer clearly, coldly, like a contract. To lead the newly created Cultural Strategy and Immersive Experience Division at Apex. Salary, office, team, budget. Full autonomy within the framework of the approved strategy. The task is to make what she has just demonstrated a system product. It's not gratitude, he snapped, seeing her protest begin. It's an investment. I saw the asset. The asset is rare, with an unobvious but huge potential return. I'm buying. It's up to you to sell. They arrived at his penthouse. She stood in the middle of the living room, still in that dress, feeling reality split into before and after. And if I fail? What is it? She asked. Then we'll fail together. But I'm betting it's not. He came closer, but he didn't touch her. The conditions are simple. No hints of anything personal. Just a job. You will be the most junior vice president in the company's history, and everyone will hate you. Are you ready? Anna looked at her hands, then at his face. To a man who saw in it not a function, but a power. Or maybe he just successfully used a variable. Yes, she said. I'm ready. A year later, Annabelle was not just successful. She was a phenomenon. An article in Forbes called it Apex's secret weapon. The Dubai-based project, Apex Mirage. The Memory Palace received 3 international awards even before opening. She hired a team of equally obsessed people, curators, anthropologists, and sound designers. Her life turned into a series of flights, presentations, talent searches in the slums of Mexico City and the workshops of Reykjavik. Leonard kept his word. He gave complete freedom and unconditionally covered the rear in front of the board of directors, where skepticism about spending money on some graffiti artists was chronic. Their relationship existed in a narrow, clearly fenced-off space between office, airport, presentation. He was her boss, her shield, her harshest critic. There was tension between them, intellectual, almost sexual in its intensity, but they avoided it like a landmine. The rules of the game were sacred. For the time being, the glitch began with a small note in the gossip column of page 6. Who is the mysterious muse inspiring Leonard Graves? Insiders are talking about the rapid rise of Annabelle, whose past is shrouded in darkness. It was a hint, fly. Leonard ignored it. Then there was a lot of material in a business magazine with her interview. And then, as if on cue, the mine went off. He was sitting in his office when Marcus, now his right-hand man again, sent a link. An article in the yellow online tabloid The Whisper with a screaming headline. From mop to top, the Cinderella story of Apex's VP is a fairy tale for the Me Too era. The text was masterly mud. Details of her past work with Leonard, a source at the cleaning company, hints of special night meetings in the penthouse, a strange rapid rise without visible experience. Photos of her old house in Brooklyn. A mention of Chloe, a student sister whose tuition fees are now being paid by a generous boss. The article did not state anything directly. She was sowing, and the soil was fertile. During the day, we received calls from members of the board of directors. The tone was politely concerned. Leonard, this is damaging the brand's reputation. Apex is a family, a tradition. Such a perception, it's poisonous. The next day, at the Metropolitan Opera's traditional charity gala, Anna encountered the open cold for the first time. The directors' wives smiled at her too broadly and quickly averted their eyes. The men shook hands a little longer than necessary, and their eyes slid appreciatively. That's where Olivia Van Horn came from. The daughter of one of Apex's main investors, an heiress to the steel empire, a graduate of Yale and the Sorbonne, and a board member of 3 museums. She was the epitome of the world that Anna had burst into like a meteor. Flawless, confident, legitimate. Olivia approached Leonard with the ease of an old acquaintance, kissed him on the cheek. Leo, dear, Dad said you've done a miracle with Dubai. And this must be your new star? She turned to Anna, her blue eyes as clear and empty as mountain lakes. I've heard about your unusual work. How brave. That same week, Leonard called Anna to his place. You're not going to London to meet with the fund's investors, he said, looking at the monitor. Why? I've been preparing the presentation for a month. Because the press will be there. A lot. And Francis Van Horn, Olivia's father. After that article, it's better to lower the degree. So you're excluding me from the project? Because of the gossip? I'm protecting you and the project. He slammed his fist on the table, showing anger in front of her for the first time. You don't understand how it works? You're going to be provoked at every turn. Olivia will go. She has the right name, she can handle it. Olivia? The one who calls modern art a cute hobby. Do you trust her with my project? This is not your project. This is the Apex project. Stop it, he shouted. He immediately softened his tone when he saw how white her face was. Anna, listen to me. This is a temporary measure. We need to wait out the storm. Let the story die. But the measures multiplied. She was removed from the public award ceremony. Her interview was cancelled. Increasingly, at meetings where she defended the budget for risky performance, Leonard said after her speech. Thank you, Anna. We will consider it, and he turned the conversation to the payback figures that his financial director was preparing. He was building a wall, with the best of intentions, to protect her from blows. But the wall was separating her from him and from the very power he had given her. The highlight was his birthday. A big reception at his penthouse. Anna arrived late, after a work call with Sol, and I saw them in the center of the hall. Leonard and Olivia were dancing. Not just standing, but dancing, an old-fashioned foxtrot. Olivia was talking, laughing, throwing her head back. Leonard was smiling. It wasn't the rare, sincere smile she sometimes caught. It was a social, casual mask. But in the context of Olivia's white dress, her impeccable manners, and the approving glances of the guests, this mask looked like part of a perfect whole. They were a picture from the catalogue of a life she was forbidden to enter. Leonard caught Anna's eye across the room. For a moment, something flashed in his eyes: anxiety, guilt. But he didn't stop. He continued dancing. Anna did not make her way through the crowd. She didn't make a scene. She turned around, walked through the kitchen, where the catering was bustling, called the elevator and left. In the taxi, she looked at the flashing lights of Manhattan and felt something inside her finally and irrevocably break. Not because of Olivia. Because of his choice. Choosing convenience. Choosing the rules of the game of his world. Choosing to protect his reputation rather than protect them, the fragile, non-verbal partnership that was between them. The next morning, she entered his office without knocking and put an envelope on his desk. "What is it?" He didn't look up. "My resignation." He raised his head. His face contorted. "Are you crazy? Because of yesterday? It was just a dance." "No, Leonard," her voice was calm, tired, as if after a long illness. "It's not because of the dance. It's because of everything that came before him. You hired me because I was real. And now that this reality has become inconvenient, you're trying to pack me up, hide me, replace me with a more respectable model. You violated our unwritten terms. I'm trying to keep you safe." He jumped up, his voice booming. "This world will eat you alive if you stick your head out. I'm creating an air cushion for you. I don't need an airbag. I needed your trust. And you don't believe me. You don't believe that I can withstand a blow. You don't believe that I'm strong enough to be by your side, not as a cocoon, but as an ally. You see me as a problem that needs to be solved. I'm not leaving Apex. I'm leaving a man who has forgotten how to see me as a partner." She went out, leaving him alone in the middle of the office, where an envelope lay on the table. As evidence of the complete and unconditional collapse of the system he had created. This time it was the fault of the main operator. The first weeks without it were like running a system with a remote mission-critical module. Everything was functioning, but with constant, minor glitches. The reports on cultural projects came dry, devoid of the very nervous system that she had built into them. There was dead silence at the meetings on the Dubai project after the questions: what is the emotional arc of the guest here? Olivia Van Horn, who formally supervised the direction after Anna's departure, offered to bring a couple of famous installations from Gagosian. It was right, safe, and completely lifeless. Leonard found himself, out of habit, looking for her gaze through the glass wall of her former office. Someone else was sitting there now. His penthouse, cleaned to a shine by a new, unnamed cleaner, seemed to him like a giant, empty sarcophagus. One night, when he returned from another dinner with investors, he did not turn on the light. He sat on the floor by the fireplace, which she had once cleaned. The floor was cold and completely smooth. He looked at his hands, the hands that built empires, made deals worth billions. And for the first time in 20 years, they seemed useless to him. He could buy anything, but he couldn't buy back that rare, fragile asset, her trust, her faith in him. He realized his mistake with mathematical clarity. He tried to fit a unique, nonlinear variable into his old, linear control system. To protect her, he began to suppress her basic qualities of autonomy and directness. In an attempt to preserve the asset, he destroyed its value. Meanwhile, Anna was trying to return to her old life. She moved out of an expensive rented apartment and returned to Brooklyn. I responded to several offers. She received calls from art funds, galleries, and even from Apex's competitors. Everyone wanted to get that bell. She went to interviews, said the right words, but there was an emptiness inside. She was running from pain, from humiliation, from the feeling that she had been turned into a function again. She became a freelance consultant, helping a small gallery in Chelsea prepare an exhibition. The work was interesting, but the scale was so tiny after the world she had come to know. She didn't miss the glitter. She missed the complexity, the challenge, the way her brain was working at its limit next to him. She hated herself for this longing. The turning point came 2 months later. Chloe, sitting in the kitchen of their modest apartment, handed her a tablet. "This is for you. I think it's about you." On the screen was the website of The Economist magazine. An interview with Leonard Graves titled "The Future of Luxury. Beyond Luxury." Anna wanted to put it off, but her eyes found her name on their own. The reporter asked, "Mr. Graves, last year you made an unconventional personnel move, bringing a person without a classical background to a key role. After the recent uproar over this appointment and the subsequent departure of an employee, do you consider this approach to be a mistake?" There was a picture of him on the screen. He looked tired but collected. "The appointment was not a mistake. My subsequent strategy was a mistake," his voice said in her head as she read. "I hired a man because he had a unique quality, the ability to see and create meanings where others see only the decor. It's a rare skill. And then, when this skill attracted unwanted attention, I, driven by old corporate instincts, tried to mute this skill. Protect it. Systematize it. It was a fundamental management error. You can't control a genius through control. You can only create a space for him and protect the boundaries of that space. I defended the wrong borders. I defended the walls of my old fortress, not the territory of the new continent that we began to explore together. As a result, I did not lose an employee. I have lost my most important strategic partner. And this is the most expensive loss of my career." Anna was reading and couldn't stop. Then she read it again. And more. Then she put the tablet on the table, rested her forehead on her palms and sobbed. For the first time, not from resentment, not from fatigue, but from relief. He understood. He saw it. He named the error. And he publicly acknowledged its value. Not as a woman, but as a partner. These tears washed away the remnants of bitterness, leaving only the pure, burning, and very complicated truth. She missed him. And a war they could fight together. He wasn't looking for her in offices or through headhunters. He started with Chloe. A polite, incredibly scrupulous call. "I'm not asking for her contacts. I want you to tell him that I want to talk to you. If she agrees, let her set any place and time." Chloe, after a brief struggle between wanting to protect her sister and being impressed by the article, relayed. The place became a small island on the Hudson River, a new park on the pier. Neutral territory, no man's land. She came earlier, wearing simple jeans and a windbreaker, looking at the water. He came up without a jacket, in a shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked simpler. Not crushed, but devoid of the usual gloss. "Thanks for coming," he said. "I read the interview." "I know." They walked in silence along the winding paths among the greenery. "I was doing a retrospective analysis," he began, looking ahead. "As after the failure of a big project. The goal is not to find the culprit, but to understand the point of failure of the system. The point of failure was in my perception. I saw you as Anna's project, the most ambitious and risky in my portfolio. And when the project was attacked, I applied standard asset protection protocols. Isolation, risk reduction, and replacement of volatile components with stable ones. I didn't see that you weren't an asset in my portfolio. You're the co-owner of a new, separate company. And my protocols became an act of corporate raiding against my partner. She listened, amazed. He spoke in his own language, the language of systems and analysis, but the meaning was human, sincere to the point of pain. I didn't come to apologize. Apologies are the currency of the past. I have come with a new offer. It's not about working at Apex. You're not going back there, and that's right. He stopped and turned to her. I propose to establish an independent foundation. The Keystone Foundation. 50-50. Your share is not an option, but a direct foundation contribution equal to mine. The goal is to find, finance, and integrate into commercial spaces, not only Apex projects by artists, sculptors, and composers who work with the memory of a place, as you said. The foundation is your zone of complete, indisputable control. I provide the initial capital, the legal structure, and access to the network. You are everything else. This is not a charity. This is a venture fund where we invest in the cultural code, like in a startup. And we share the profits. Anna looked at him, at the wind blowing through his hair. And personal? What is it? She asked softly. What are the conditions there? In the personal, there are no conditions. Just the circumstances. I can't promise that I won't get scared again. I can't promise that old habits won't make me build walls. But I can promise that if I start building them, I'll tell you about it. And I'll let you tear down these walls. I'm offering you a partnership, Anna. In everything. With all the risks, with all the uncertainty. No guarantees, except for one thing. I will never treat you as my asset again. Only as an ally. Even if this union will be painful at times. She was silent for a long time, looking out at the water, at a pair of cargo barges sailing up the Hudson River. My terms, she finally said. First, the foundation is on an equal footing. All key decisions are made by consensus. Secondly, we never use our relationship, whatever it may be, as a trump card in business or as an alibi. They exist separately. And the third and most important thing is that if we disagree again, we will not start a Cold War. We sit down and talk. Even if it hurts. Even if it's too late. We have to do this. Because allies don't shoot each other in the back. They come face to face. He held out his hand. Not for shaking hands with business partners. Palm up. Accepted. She put her hand in his. There was no kiss, no hug. There was an agreement. A new treaty written on top of the ashes of the old one. The epilogue. 4 months later. The construction site of the Bushwick Loft, the future headquarters and first exhibition site of the Keystone Foundation. Noise, dust, the smell of fresh paint and concrete. Anna, in work clothes, with a tablet in her hands, is hotly arguing with the architect about the location of the light shafts. Her hair is in a messy bun, and there's a smudge of lime on her cheek. Leonard, also in plain pants and a t-shirt, stands next to an electrical contractor, waving a printout. No, you misunderstood me. Electricity here should be more than just functional. It's part of the installation. These wires, they should be visible, but in a tech-noir aesthetic. Like arteries. Redo it. The contractor grumbles something, but goes to redo it. Leonard turns and catches Anna's eye. She had just won her argument with the architect. They look at each other through the chaos of the construction site. And they're both smiling. Not with secular, not with formal smiles. The real, tired, beaming smiles of people who have found not peace or passion, but something else, a common, complex, infinitely interesting business. They don't kiss. They nod to each other like partners, confirming, "We are on the right track." Then they go back to work. Their story didn't end with a happy ending. She just moved into a new, much more interesting phase.